1, 2. Do. Cool. Thanks for having me, WarsawJS. That's been a pleasure so far. Thanks very much to Peter, who helped me actually to get here safely and meet you all. I would be happy to hang out after the meetup. Let's discuss the talk. Let's discuss whatever you have in mind. And today, I want to talk to you about building bridges. And I'll explain what is that in a second. But first, a little bit about me. I'm full-stack web and mobile dev. I work mostly in startups for the past maybe 4 or 5 years. I love podcasting. So if you are into podcasts, I have an awesome recommendation, which is not very humble to say, probably. Check out Code Podcast. It's a podcast about coding in general. The last episode we did on software design and how people actually approach the process of designing software. How do they come up with features and stuff like that. So check this out. I'm also an organizer of WarsawJS, which is like WarsawJS, but I guess not that cool. And Frontend Union Conf, and I'll talk about Frontend Union a little bit further down the line. I work at Productive Mobile, and this is kind of important. This is not bragging, it's just so you know that I'm related to what I'm going to talk about. Blah, blah. You can hear some startup music in background. So basically, this is our product. What we do is we help you create mobile apps from existing web apps on the fly. So you pick some elements from the web page. You can see the preview of a mobile app in the live mode. And this is the version from 2 years ago. It's now much more advanced. But you get the idea, right? You have a website. You create from an existing website a mobile app. Yeah, it's that easy. But why is that important? Because this is, I'm mentioning this because we are working a lot on the edge of, native code and JavaScript. And we try to put it together and work so that they can work together in the most efficient way. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. Originally, I thought that there will be about 80% of code, but after those 2 talks, I've decided that probably there will be a little bit more demos, less code. There will be a little bit of advertising in the end, so just be prepared. And yeah, before you turn on your ad blockers on me, let me just say, how awesome is WarsawJS, right? It's a great place, it's a great meetup, it's pretty cool, but I have doubts about this JS thing. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit 2015 or something like that. Can we make it even cooler? And I say, you know what? I think we can. Let me introduce you Warsaw Native. This is a completely new product. I'm presenting it here for the first time. We've developed it during, well, actually, I've developed it during this morning. But it's incredible. It's going to change our lives, I guarantee you. This is how it looks like. This is a screenshot, but this thing actually works, I hope. And this is all about, mixing native stuff and and JavaScript. Let's start with the thing. Who here knows what Webviews are? Someone dealt with them, right? So just a brief explanation. In a mobile APIs, you usually have a view that you can use as a browser. You basically built in the browser inside your mobile app, and you can open any page in this web view, right? And so, for example, PhoneGap, these guys built a whole product around those web views. They allowed you to package your web applications inside native applications, which were just launched in web views, right? And they could use native APIs and stuff like that. And I thought, what the hell? How hard is that? Turns out it's 2 hours for a guy who doesn't know Swift to write a Swift code. We can easily implement this ourselves. And what you're seeing is basically an Xcode project, Warsaw native. I hope you appreciate the logo. And yeah, it loads, and there is a menu. I'm a terrible designer, sorry for that. And this is the first demonstration. So what you see in the top part is native. This was rendered, these are basically native controls. And what you see here is a web view. What we can do, super easy, if it works. Nothing works. Okay, yes, it works. We can send messages from native part to a web view, super easy. And we can do the same thing in the opposite direction, right? How do we do that? The thing is that on every web view, we have this special object called JS context. And you can look at JS context as basically your window object in JavaScript, except you can access it in your native code, like Objective-C code or Swift code. And that means you can create functions in native code and assign them to this window object, right? So what I do here basically is, right, I get this context from a web view, and I create, I call a function in this case, receive message. It's basically like I'm calling window.receiveMessage, and I'm passing some data to it. It looks like magic. In PhoneGap, it doesn't work like that, and they have a complicated system to do that. But it is super simple. It's like you access window object from your native code. And same thing, I also create a function somewhere. Pum, 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 pum. Send. Right. I also create a function send message, which is a native function, which is like written in Swift. But I can pass it on to the window object, and you can call it from your JavaScript. And that's how basically the message gets delivered. So on a window object, you now have a send method that calls the Swift API. I can show also the JavaScript very briefly, but it's super simple. We have an input, a button, and every time we press a button, I extract a message, and I send this message using send message method that I created in native code. So this is one thing, right? This is about communicating with web views. So basically, we've created PhoneGap, or like the basis for PhoneGap, in no time almost. It is possible using special objects called JS contexts. We can access and we can override almost any object, any JavaScript object. The thing is that we have to remember is because it's UI thing, because WebView is a part of UI, everything is running in UI thread in mobile. So it's like a single event loop in JavaScript. We have like single thread, and same on mobile. You can have multiple threads, but all UI work you have to do on one thread, which is a UI thread. And this is kind of a bummer, but we'll get to that. A little sidestep, right? So I've been working with WebViews a lot, and I haven't been paying that much attention to it, but apparently, who of you have seen something like that? For example, you open a Facebook app, and then you go to a website, and then at some point, you have to log into Google, right? You have seen these things. So this is actually a local HTML that I just saved, and with all the styles, it looks like Google, but it actually is not. And you cannot see the URL, and basically I can steal your data in no time. And I thought, you know, it's probably a lot of effort to save HTML and styles. The thing is that you can actually open the Google page inside the web view, and you can enter something like blah, 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 gmail.com, bam. Can you see this little tiny console here? I can access every request and every response that is going from and to this web view. And I can read this plain data just as text. It's HTTPS connection. Nobody gives a whatever. And same with password, actually. I can just enter, oops, see? Come on. Yeah, you can see it here. So the thing is, never use Webviews and log in anywhere. People are going to steal your data. This is another thing. And now to exciting stuff. Who of you have heard of React Native? Who of you, when he heard about React Native, thought, like, how is this even fucking possible? Yeah? I thought like that. I didn't understand it at all. So enter JS virtual machine object. So what you can see here above is just a text area. What you can see here is a run button. And this is just another text area where I will output result. And the thing is that currently it happens in a separate JS context object that I artificially created. Bam. I mean, it works. Nothing surprising. We can do that all the time. It's not a problem. But then what if we make this task a little bit harder, right? Okay, I'm going to write this by hand because it's a mess. What if we say do like 1,000 iterations of random stuff and, you know, just block the event loop because we don't care. Live coding always get messy. Bam. Not random. Something. What? Yeah, right. Nice catch. Bam. Okay, it works. Now let's make 10,000 iterations. Works. 100,000 iterations. Works. 1,000. Okay. You can see a slight delay. I add another 0. And it's gone. Okay. So you can see a big delay. I won't add another 0 because it's huge work. So what we are doing is we have the same UI thread, right? And although we have a separate JS context that we have created for executing this JavaScript, I will show you. Yeah, actually I can show it right now. I just call JS context.evaluate script and then I use the result in another text area. We use a different JS context that we created manually, but it's still attached to the same thread, to the main thread where we draw UI. And this will always happen if you have Webviews and Webview.js contexts, because Webviews are kind of undivisible from the UI thread. But what if we just make it run in another thread? Because using this special object called JS virtual machine, we can completely abstract running JavaScript and just make it a separate thread, like a separate process on your machine when you run Node, right? And let me just recompile this guy. Yeah, some projects need recompilation. That's crazy, right? For us working on JavaScript. No. I'll get better at it over time. Dum pum pum. Right. No time. 1 more 0. No time. 1 more 0. Some delay, but we can still interact with the UI. A huge delay, but we can work. Nothing is blocked, right? I can add another 0 and let it calculate. This thing works. Like the UI isn't blocked. We have a JavaScript running in a separate thread that counts its thing and we don't care about it. Now guess what? right? And here we go. We can write code that outputs React components, and then we just dump all the thing in, when we have built the React tree, we can just use the UI thread to render it. But the building of the React tree and all the processing and the layout process can happen on a separate thread. Of course, there is a much smarter system. There are queues, and it's all optimized and stuff, but the idea stays the same. You just have a separate thread where you run your JavaScript, it sends you the result, and you render it in a UI thread. You do minimum work on the UI thread, you outsource everything else to a JavaScript thread. Right? So just to summarize this point, we have this special object JS virtual machine that allows us to create JS contexts that are not tied to the main thread. And this is huge. We can do any work we want. We write JavaScript and just do it in a separate thread, and it will be performant and nice and not block the UI. My point of the talk, I guess, is we somehow are afraid of native APIs. Like we don't go deep into them, and I think it's a huge issue because in terms of performance, like there is nothing that can make Webview perform better than native. It's not happening. But what we can do is we can write code in a language that we want to write, or we can write parts of stuff in a language that we want to write, and still use native API for performance critical things. And this is not as hard as it seems. Yeah, and also WarsawJS now has their own app. I guess we need to publish it in App Store. And you can like write JavaScript on the iPhone. Like, how cool is that? So this was the informative part. I promised there would be an advertisement part, and here we go. I guess, oh, what the hell. So, as I said, I'm also doing a conference, and this conference will take place in Vilnius, and it will be in the end of August. It's called Front-End Union Conference. It's 1 day, it's only front-end, it's 8 talks, and after party and pre-party. So it's just 1 day in Vilnius to hang out with awesome people. By awesome people, I mean guys like Martin Split, who do crazy things like this. Like he basically builds a VR that is tied to his room, and he walks with his tablet, and it's basically Pokemon Go, but in VR. And he's going to talk about WebGL, so I don't know, I'm super excited about it. And there will be also people like Martin Kleppe. I don't know if you know this guy. He basically can write anything in 128 characters. For example, like one of the projects that I love from him is this globe. It's actually an iframe. And you can see the source code of the thing that is spinning just printed here. It's all 1 kilobyte of JavaScript. And in his talks, he tells you how he does this. And I don't want to brag, but have you seen how small amount of JavaScript I wrote? It's basically all inspired by Martin's tricks and tips that he gives. It's like when you dive inside this thing, it's super crazy. Yeah, I do. Pretty much all of them. So yeah, of course you get a discount. Of course it's welcome WarsawJS, and you can get to the website and yeah, just get a discount now. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Questions time. There's one.
Now, we've done something similar in the past, but our adventure has been with Node.js and C#. Don't ask how. Now, one common issue we've run into is type marshalling between the Node user space and And well, that was Swift in your case, right? So
we like at work we do it in Objective-C. I actually learned Swift this morning for this, so it doesn't matter. The thing is, I guess you mean how do you transform JavaScript objects into whatever types you have?
yeah, what do you get? Just strings and integers, or do you get complete types like maps, objects, and?
You get complete types, and you also can register your custom types. Like you can create a class person, and you will get it when you need, person.
Okay, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? My question then, who is this guy in this sunglasses?
It's Apollo, no?
Mickiewicz?
Huh?
Who is it?
It's I think it's a god of arts and beauty in old Greece. So the motto of the conference is "Code is a form of art," and like you can see what those guys do, and sometimes that's no wonder, And this is why we have chosen this guy. We also painted him. I guess it's vandalism technically, but who cares?
Okay, thanks a lot. Any other questions? No questions? All right, so thanks a lot, Andrey, for coming, especially for the...
Thank you.